You know, I've been thinking about something lately. Something most people spend their entire lives running from: silence. Not the awkward kind, not the uncomfortable pause in conversation, but real silence. The kind that makes people squirm. The kind that forces you to sit with yourself, with your thoughts, with the truth you've been avoiding. And here's what I've learned. The moment you stop talking, the moment you stop explaining yourself, stop defending your choices, stop chasing validation from people who were never going to give it anyway, that's when everything changes. That's when life stops being a battle and starts becoming what it was always meant to be. Let me tell you something. I've lost people. People I loved. People I thought would be there forever. My daughter, before she was even born, then the woman I loved, car accident, gone, just like that. And in those moments, when grief hits you like a freight train and the world expects you to keep moving, keep talking, keep pretending you're okay, I learned something powerful. Silence saved me, not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood that some things don't need to be said. Some pain doesn't need to be explained. Some losses don't need to be justified to people who will never truly understand. I stopped talking and I started listening to myself, to what my soul actually needed, to the quiet voice buried beneath all the noise telling me, you don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. Now, I know what you're thinking. Keanu, staying silent sounds nice, but how does that actually help me? How does that change anything? And I get it. We live in a world that rewards noise. The loudest voice wins. The person who talks the most gets the attention. The one who's always available, always posting, always proving something, that's who people notice, right? Wrong. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest? Always talking, always proving something, always chasing validation from anyone who'll give it. But the strongest person, the one who actually has power, they move in silence. They don't need to announce every move. They don't need to explain their choices. They don't need your approval to know they're on the right path. And that is real strength. Here's the thing about silence that nobody tells you. It's a filter, a test, a way of seeing who's really there for you and who was just there for the show. When you stop talking, when you stop being available 24/7, when you stop explaining yourself to people who never truly cared to understand, something incredible happens. The wrong people remove themselves. No arguments needed, no confrontations, no dramatic exits. They just fade away because they were never really there for you in the first place. They were there for what they could get from you. Your energy, your attention, your validation. And the moment you stop giving it, they're gone. But the right people, the ones who truly matter, they stay. They don't need constant updates. They don't need you to prove your worth. They don't disappear the moment you stop performing. They just understand. If you've made it this far, drop A in the comments. Because if you're still here, you already understand that real power doesn't need to be loud. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you just sat in silence, no phone, no music, no distractions, just you and your thoughts? Most people can't do it. They fill every second with noise because silence forces them to face things they've been avoiding. Their regrets, their fears, the uncomfortable truth about where they are versus where they thought they'd be. But silence isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. I remember being on set years ago, surrounded by cameras, crew members, dozens of people, and yet I felt completely alone. Not in a sad way, but in a way that made me realize I don't need all this noise to know who I am. the silence between takes, that's where I found myself. That's where I remembered what actually mattered. And I started carrying that with me, offset, in relationships, in life. I stopped filling every moment with words. I stopped explaining myself to people who had already made up their minds about me. I stopped defending my choices to folks who wouldn't understand, even if I spent hours breaking it down for them. And you know what happened? Peace. Real, genuine peace. Not because everything suddenly became perfect, but because I stopped wasting energy on things that never mattered in the first place. Here's what most people don't understand about silence. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's not you giving up or running away. Silence is strategic. Think about a lion. A lion doesn't roar every 5 minutes to prove it's dangerous. It doesn't need to. Its presence alone commands respect. It moves with quiet confidence. And when it does make a sound, everything stops and listens. That's power. But a dog barks at everything. Every car that passes, every person who walks by, constantly making noise, and nobody takes it seriously. Most people live like dogs, barking at every opportunity, announcing every plan, explaining every decision, trying to prove something to everyone. But the people who truly succeed, the ones who actually build something lasting, they move like lions. Quiet, focused, strategic. They work in silence and let the results speak for them. Now here's where it gets interesting. And this is something I want you to really think about. When you stay silent, when you stop chasing people who don't chase you back, when you stop explaining yourself to those who never truly cared, you gain something most people never have. Clarity. You start seeing people for who they really are, not who you hoped they'd be. You start noticing patterns you ignored before. You start recognizing red flags you convinced yourself were just misunderstandings. Silence gives you space to observe, to think, to understand. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. If you've ever realized someone's true colors only after you stop trying to fix the relationship, I've been there. We all have. You pour your heart into someone, a friend, a partner, whoever. You give them everything, your time, your energy, your loyalty, and you assume they value it because, well, why wouldn't they? But then you step back. You stop initiating every conversation. You stop making all the plans. You stop being the one who always reaches out. And suddenly, silence. They don't call. They don't text. They don't check in. And that silence, as painful as it might be, that silence is your answer. It tells you everything words never could. They didn't value you. They valued what you did for them. And the moment you stopped doing it, they moved on. But here's the beautiful part. You gained something invaluable. You gained the truth. And the truth, even when it hurts, is always better than living in a comfortable lie. Let me tell you about something I learned the hard way. Desperation repels what you desire. Think about that for a second. The more you chase something, a person, a goal, success, respect, the more it runs from you. It's like trying to catch a butterfly. The harder you grab for it, the faster it flies away. But the moment you stand still, the moment you stop chasing, it lands right on your shoulder. Life works the same way. When you chase people, you push them away. When you beg for respect, you lose it. When you explain your worth, you diminish it. But when you stop, when you simply exist in your own power, confident, secure, unbothered, everything you've been chasing starts coming to you. Not because you played games, not because you manipulated anyone, but because you finally understood your value enough to stop running after what was never running toward you in the first place. And I see this everywhere. People desperate for love, so they settle for anyone who shows them attention. People desperate for success, so they take shortcuts and burn out. People desperate for approval, so they change who they are just to fit in. And none of it works. Because desperation has an energy. People feel it, opportunities sense it, and nothing valuable responds well to desperation. But confidence, self-assurance, the quiet knowing that you're enough exactly as you are, that's magnetic, that's powerful, that attracts everything you've been searching for. Here's something nobody talks about. Silence protects your dreams. You know what kills more dreams than failure? Sharing them with the wrong people too soon. Not everyone wants to see you win. I wish that wasn't true, but it is. Some people will smile to your face, nod along when you talk about your goals, and then the moment you walk away, they're hoping you fail. Not because they're evil, but because your growth reminds them of everything they haven't done. Your ambition makes them uncomfortable. Your success threatens their excuses, so they plant doubt. Are you sure that's realistic? Don't you think you should wait? What if it doesn't work out? And if you're not careful, if you share your vision with people who don't have the capacity to see it, their doubt becomes your doubt. Their fear becomes your fear. And your dream dies before it even has a chance to breathe. That's why silence is so important. Not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting your energy, protecting your vision, protecting your dream from people who don't deserve access to it. Work in silence, build in private, let your results do the talking. Because here's the truth. The people who need to announce every move are usually the ones who never make any real progress. But the ones who stay quiet, the ones who put their heads down and actually do the work, those are the ones who end up winning. If you're committing to working in silence and letting your results speak, drop a... Now, let's talk about something most people struggle with. Patience. God, I hate that word sometimes. Be patient. Trust the timing. Good things take time. Yeah. We've all heard it. And it sounds nice. It sounds wise. But when you're in the middle of the struggle, when you're working your ass off and seeing no results, when everyone around you seems to be moving forward while you're stuck, patience feels like a cruel joke. I get it. I've been there. But here's what I've learned. Patience isn't about waiting. It's about trusting. Trusting that the work you're doing matters even when you can't see the results yet. Trusting that growth happens beneath the surface long before it becomes visible. Trusting that everything you're going through right now is preparing you for something bigger. Think about a tree. When you plant a seed, nothing happens for weeks, maybe months. You water it, you take care of it, and still, nothing. You might start to think, did I do something wrong? Is this seed dead? Should I give up? But underneath the soil, that seed is working. It's growing roots, building a foundation, strengthening itself. And one day, when you least expect it, a tiny sprout breaks through. The growth was happening all along. You just couldn't see it. That's your life right now. You're building roots. You're developing strength you don't even realize you have yet. And just because you can't see the progress doesn't mean it's not happening. So be patient, not passive, but patient. Keep showing up, keep doing the work, keep trusting the process. Because I promise you, the moment you're about to give up is usually right before the breakthrough happens. Here's something else I want you to understand. Silence reveals truth. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending your choices, when you stop trying to convince people of your worth, you force them to show their true colors. And sometimes that's uncomfortable because you start seeing things you didn't want to see. You realize that person you thought was a friend, they were only around for what they could get from you. That relationship you've been fighting for, they stopped fighting for it a long time ago. That dream everyone said was unrealistic, they just didn't have the vision to see what you saw. Silence strips away the illusions. It removes the distractions. It forces reality to settle in. And yes, sometimes that reality hurts, but it also sets you free. Because once you see the truth, once you stop lying to yourself about who people really are and what they really want, you can finally move forward. You can finally stop wasting energy on people who don't deserve it. You can finally focus on what actually matters. The truth might hurt, but it's the only thing that will set you free. Drop a comment and tell me, what's one truth you've been avoiding? What's one thing you know deep down but haven't wanted to face? Let me tell you about absence. About what happens when you remove yourself from spaces that don't value you. Most people think their presence is obvious. They think people notice them, appreciate them, value them. But here's the harsh truth. People don't know what they have until it's gone. When you're always available, always giving, always showing up, people take you for granted. They assume you'll always be there. They stop appreciating the effort. They stop recognizing the value. But the moment you step back, the moment you stop calling, stop reaching out, stop being the one who always makes the effort, that's when they feel it. That's when they notice the void. That's when they realize what they lost. And here's the powerful part. Absence doesn't lie. It reveals exactly how much someone actually valued you. If they notice you're gone and reach out, if they make an effort to reconnect, if they show you through their actions that they actually care, then maybe, just maybe, they're worth keeping around. But if they don't, if they let you walk away without a second thought, then you have your answer. And as painful as that might be, it's the truth you needed to see. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. If someone doesn't see your value while you're there, your absence is the only teacher they'll understand. Now, here's the thing about validation, and this is big. Most people are addicted to it. They need constant reassurance. They need likes, comments, compliments, approval. They need someone to tell them they're doing great, they're on the right path, they're enough. And I'm not saying wanting recognition is wrong. We're human. We want to be seen. We want to be appreciated. But the moment you need it, the moment you depend on external validation to feel worthy, you give away your power. You let other people control how you feel about yourself. And that's dangerous, because what happens when the validation stops? What happens when people don't notice you? When they don't clap for your success? When they don't give you the reaction you hoped for? If your confidence is built on their approval, you crumble. But when you validate yourself, when you know your worth regardless of what anyone else thinks, nothing can shake you. No amount of criticism breaks you. No lack of recognition stops you. No rejection makes you question yourself. Because your value isn't determined by opinions, it's determined by you. And once you truly own that, you become unstoppable. Real power doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It simply exists, quiet, confident, unshakable. And people respect that. They might not always say it, but they feel it. Because there's nothing more intimidating than someone who knows their worth and refuses to let anyone else define it. If you're done seeking validation and you're ready to validate yourself, Let me tell you something about the people who win in life. The ones who actually build something meaningful, something lasting. They're not the loudest. They're not the ones always in your face, always posting, always talking about what they're gonna do. They're the ones working in silence. While everyone else is busy making noise, they're making progress. While everyone else is busy explaining their plans, they're executing them. While everyone else is busy seeking approval, they're building something that doesn't need approval to exist. And then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, they show up with results. Real, undeniable results. And everyone's shocked. Where did that come from? How did they do that? But it didn't come from nowhere. It came from months, maybe years, of silent work, of showing up when no one was watching, of putting in the effort when there was no guarantee it would pay off, of staying focused when everyone else was distracted. That's the power of silence. It keeps you focused. It protects your energy. It eliminates distractions. And when you finally reveal what you've been building, it speaks for itself. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to defend it. You don't need to convince anyone of its value. It just is. Here's what I want you to understand about the strongest people you know, the ones who seem unshakable, the ones who move with purpose and confidence. They didn't get there by talking about it. They got there by being about it. They didn't waste time explaining their journey to people who wouldn't understand anyway. They didn't seek permission from those who would never give it. They didn't wait for the perfect moment or the right conditions. They just moved. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And here's what happens when you adopt that mindset. You become immune to distraction. You become resistant to doubt. You become focused in a way that most people never experience. Because when you're not wasting energy, explaining yourself, defending your choices, or seeking validation, all that energy gets channeled into one thing: progress. And progress, real progress, doesn't need an announcement. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need witnesses. It just happens. Think about the most successful people in history, the ones who actually changed the world. They didn't do it by being loud. They did it by being focused. By working when no one was watching. By believing in themselves when no one else did. By staying silent when everyone else was talking. And by the time the world noticed them, it was too late to stop them, because their work spoke louder than any words ever could. Let me tell you something about noise versus impact. Most people confuse the two. They think being loud equals being important. They think constant activity equals progress. They think talking about their goals is the same as actually achieving them. But it's not. Noise is easy. Anyone can make noise. Anyone can talk about what they're going to do, post about their plans, announce their intentions. But impact? Impact requires silence. It requires focus. It requires the discipline to shut out the world and do the work. And here's the irony. The quieter you are, the louder your impact becomes. Because when you're not diluting your energy with constant explanations and updates, when you're not seeking validation every step of the way, your work becomes pure, undistracted, powerful. That's when you create something that actually matters. That's when you build something that lasts. If you're ready to stop making noise and start making impact. Now, I want to talk about something that changed everything for me. The moment I realized I didn't owe anyone an explanation for my choices. For so long, I felt like I had to justify everything. My career decisions, my personal life, my boundaries, my beliefs. And every time someone questioned me, I'd launch into this elaborate explanation, trying to make them understand, trying to get their approval, trying to prove that I wasn't crazy for choosing my own path. But you know what I learned? The people who truly matter don't need explanations, and the people who demand them will never be satisfied anyway. You could spend hours explaining yourself, and they still won't get it, because they don't want to understand. They want you to doubt yourself. They want you to second guess your choices. They want you to stay in a box that makes them comfortable. But the moment you stop explaining, the moment you just do what you know is right without seeking their approval, everything shifts. You reclaim your power. You take back control of your life. You stop living according to other people's expectations and start living according to your own truth. And that's freedom. Here's something most people never realize. Your life isn't a democracy. You don't need majority approval to make decisions. You don't need a committee to validate your choices. You don't need permission to live the way you want to live. This is your life, your journey, your story. And the only person who needs to approve of your choices is you. I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but think about how often you've changed your plans because someone didn't approve. How many dreams you've postponed because someone said it wasn't realistic? How many boundaries you've compromised because someone made you feel guilty for having them? We give away our power so easily. We hand over the steering wheel of our lives to people who don't even know where they're going themselves. And then we wonder why we feel lost, why we feel unfulfilled, why we feel like we're living someone else's life instead of our own. It's because we are. But here's the good news. You can take that power back right now, today. You can decide that from this moment forward, you're going to live according to your own values, not other people's expectations. You're going to pursue your own dreams, not the ones society tells you to chase. You're going to set boundaries that protect your peace, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. And you're going to do all of this in silence. Without explanation, without apology, without permission, because you don't need anyone's approval to be yourself. Let me tell you about the power of selective sharing, about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. There's wisdom in knowing who deserves access to your thoughts, your plans, your dreams. Not everyone has earned that right. Not everyone has the capacity to hold that information with care. Some people only want to know your business so they can gossip about it. Some people only want to hear your plans so they can find reasons why they won't work. Some people only want access to your dreams so they can plant seeds of doubt. But when you become selective, when you start guarding your energy and your vision like the precious resources they are, everything changes. You stop wasting time explaining yourself to people who will never understand. You stop sharing your excitement with people who will never celebrate it. You stop seeking advice from people who have never accomplished what you're trying to achieve. And instead, you channel all that energy into actually doing the work, into making progress, into building the life you want instead of talking about it. That's when real transformation happens. When you stop performing for an audience and start living for yourself. If you're committing to being more selective with who gets access to your energy and your dreams, Here's something I need you to understand. Not everyone deserves to be in your inner circle. Not everyone deserves to know your next move. Not everyone deserves access to your peace. And that's okay. Doesn't make you cold, doesn't make you closed off, doesn't make you difficult. It makes you wise. It makes you strategic. It makes you someone who values their own energy enough to protect it. The world will try to make you feel guilty for having boundaries. People will call you distant, secretive, changed. They'll say you're not the person you used to be. And you know what? They're right. You're not. Because the person you used to be gave their energy away to anyone who asked. The person you used to be explained themselves to people who never truly cared. The person you used to be sought validation from sources that could never provide it. But you've evolved. You've grown. You've learned. And the person you're becoming? That person understands the value of silence. That person knows when to speak and when to observe. That person protects their peace like it's the most valuable thing in the world, because it is. Now, let's talk about observation. About what you learn when you stop talking and start watching. When you're always speaking, always explaining, always filling the silence. You miss so much. You miss the subtle shifts in people's energy. You miss the inconsistencies in their words versus their actions. You miss the red flags waving right in front of your face. But when you stay silent, when you observe more than you participate, you see everything. You see who's genuine and who's performing. You see who's consistent and who's only there when it's convenient. You see who celebrates your wins and who secretly hopes you fail. Silence gives you clarity. It gives you perspective. It gives you the ability to make informed decisions instead of emotional ones. And that's power. Most people react. They hear something and immediately respond. They see something and instantly form an opinion. They feel something and quickly express it. But wise people, they observe. They collect information. They analyze patterns. They take their time before making moves. And that patience, that ability to stay silent and observe, that's what separates the successful from the struggling, the leaders from the followers, the strategic from the impulsive. Here's what I've learned about people through years of staying silent and observing. Actions always tell the truth. Words can lie. Words can manipulate. Words can promise things that never materialize. But actions reveal everything. Someone can tell you they care about you while never making time for you. Someone can say they support you while undermining you behind your back. Someone can promise loyalty while being the first to walk away when things get difficult. And if you're always talking, always believing what people say, you'll miss what they're actually showing you. But silence creates space for truth to emerge. It gives people room to reveal themselves without you having to ask. When you stop initiating, you see who actually wants to maintain the relationship. When you stop explaining your boundaries, you see who respects them. When you stop seeking validation, you see who values you without needing you to prove yourself. And that information, that clarity, is priceless. Because it allows you to make decisions based on reality, not potential. Based on what is, not what you wish it could be. Let me ask you something. How much of your energy are you wasting on people who wouldn't waste a second thinking about you? How many hours have you spent explaining yourself to people who were never going to understand? How many opportunities have you missed because you were too busy seeking approval from those who would never give it? Think about it. Really think about it. All that time, all that energy, all that emotional labor. What if you channeled it into yourself instead? Into your growth, into your goals, into becoming the person you're meant to be? What would your life look like then? Because here's the truth. Every minute you spend seeking validation is a minute you're not spending building something real. Every hour you spend explaining yourself is an hour you're not spending on actual progress. Every day you spend chasing people who don't value you is a day you're not spending with people who do. Your time is finite, your energy is limited, and you get to choose how you spend both. So choose wisely. Choose silence over endless explanations. Choose observation over immediate reaction. Choose strategic movement over constant noise. Choose yourself. Here's what happens when you truly embrace silence. You become magnetic. Not because you're playing games or trying to manipulate anyone, but because there's something incredibly powerful about someone who is completely comfortable in their own presence. Someone who doesn't need constant validation. Someone who doesn't seek approval. Someone who moves with quiet confidence and unwavering self-belief. People are drawn to that. They respect it. They want to understand it. Because in a world full of noise, silence stands out. In a culture of oversharing, privacy becomes intriguing. In an era of desperation for attention, self-assurance becomes magnetic. You don't need to chase anything or anyone. You just need to be so secure in yourself so focused on your own path, so committed to your own growth that the right people, the right opportunities, the right experiences naturally gravitate toward you. That's the power of silence. That's the strength of moving with purpose instead of desperation. That's the freedom of knowing your worth without needing anyone else to validate it. If you're ready to embrace this level of confidence and become magnetic through silence, drop a... Now, I want to address something important. Silence doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean cutting everyone off or refusing to communicate. It doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. True silence is about intention. It's about speaking with purpose instead of filling space. It's about sharing with people who've earned your trust instead of everyone who asks. It's about protecting your energy instead of giving it away freely. You can still have deep connections. You can still have meaningful relationships. You can still be present with the people you love, but you do it consciously, intentionally, with boundaries in place. You share your dreams with people who support them, not with people who'll shoot them down. You share your struggles with people who genuinely care, not with people who use them as gossip. You share your joy with people who celebrate you, not with people who resent your happiness. Silence is about quality over quantity, depth over breadth, meaning over noise. And when you start operating from this place, when you become intentional about who gets access to you, your relationships transform. They become deeper, more authentic, more fulfilling, because they're based on genuine connection, not obligation, on mutual respect, not convenience, on real love, not performance. Here's what I've learned about the people worth keeping in your life. They understand your silence. They don't take it personally. They don't demand constant updates or explanations. They don't make you feel guilty for taking time for yourself. They just get it. They understand that sometimes you need space, that sometimes you need to focus inward, that sometimes you need to be alone with your thoughts without it meaning anything is wrong. And they're still there when you're ready to reconnect. No guilt trips, no passive-aggressive comments, no resentment, just understanding. Those are the people you keep. Those are the relationships worth nurturing. Those are the connections that actually matter. Everyone else, everyone who demands your energy, your explanations, your constant presence, they're showing you that they value their comfort more than your well-being. And that's all the information you need. Let me tell you what happens when you master silence. When you truly understand its power and implement it in your life, you become unstoppable, not because you're louder than everyone else, not because you're more aggressive or pushy or demanding, but because you're focused, disciplined, strategic. While everyone else is distracted by noise, you're making moves. While everyone else is seeking validation, you're building confidence. While everyone else is explaining themselves, you're letting your results speak. And the results, they speak volumes. People start noticing you differently. They start respecting you more. They start treating you better. Not because you demanded it, but because you showed them through your actions, through your consistency, through your quiet confidence that you deserve it. Opportunities start appearing, not because you chased them, but because your focused energy and silent progress made you impossible to ignore. Relationships improve, not because you begged for better treatment, but because you stopped accepting less than you deserve. Your inner peace deepens, not because your circumstances changed, but because you stopped letting external chaos disturb your internal calm. That's the power of silence. That's what happens when you stop talking and start doing, when you stop explaining and start proving, when you stop seeking and start building. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Everything I've shared with you today, every lesson, every insight, it all comes down to one fundamental truth. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Not through words, not through explanations, not through constant updates or validation seeking or desperate attempts to be seen. Your presence is enough. Your progress is enough. Your peace is enough. And the moment you truly believe that, the moment you internalize that truth, everything changes. You stop wasting energy on people who don't deserve it. You stop explaining yourself to those who won't understand. You stop seeking approval from sources that can never truly satisfy you. And instead, you channel all that energy into becoming the best version of yourself, into building the life you actually want, into creating the peace you've been searching for. That's when you win. Not when everyone sees you, not when everyone understands you, not when everyone approves of you, but when you're so secure in yourself, so confident in your path, so at peace with your choices that you don't need any of that anymore. That's freedom. That's power. That's real strength. Now, here's what I want you to do next. Because understanding the power of silence is one thing, but knowing what to do with it, that's where real transformation happens. Silence gives you clarity. It gives you peace. It gives you the space to hear yourself think, to see people for who they truly are, to understand what really matters. But eventually, you have to move. You can't stay silent forever. You can't just observe and never act. You can't only build in private and never reveal what you've created. At some point, you have to take everything you've learned, all that clarity, all that strength, all that quiet confidence, and you have to channel it into action. Massive, intentional, unstoppable action. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next video. It's called, If This Doesn't Motivate You, Nothing Will. Because here's what happens after silence. After you've gained clarity, after you've understood your worth, after you've protected your energy and cut out the noise, you become dangerous. Not in a harmful way, but in a way that makes you absolutely unstoppable. Because now you're not moving from desperation, you're moving from power. You're not acting from insecurity, you're acting from confidence. You're not chasing validation, you're creating value. And when someone operates from that place, when someone has that level of focus, that level of clarity, that level of determination, nothing can stop them. That next video is going to show you exactly how to take all this wisdom, all this understanding, and turn it into momentum that changes your entire life. It's not about motivation that fades after a few days. It's not about temporary inspiration that doesn't lead to action. It's about tapping into something deeper, something permanent, something that transforms you from someone who understands what needs to be done into someone who actually does it. Because knowing is one thing, doing is everything. So watch that video next. Because if you've made it this far, you're ready. You're ready to stop just thinking about change and actually become it. You're ready to stop preparing and start executing. You're ready to show the world what you're capable of. And trust me, what you're capable of, it's far beyond what you've allowed yourself to believe up until now. Stay silent, stay strong, stay focused. And remember, real power doesn't need to be loud. It simply is. Everything you need is already inside you. You don't need to prove it to anyone. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to seek validation for it. You just need to trust it, believe in it, and let it guide you forward. The right people will see it. The right opportunities will find you. The right life will unfold. Not because you chased it, but because you became it. But you know what? There's something I haven't told you yet. Something that might be the most important part of this entire journey. Because here's what happens when you start moving in silence. When you start protecting your energy. When you start seeing people for who they truly are. You realize something painful. You realize how many people you gave your energy to who didn't deserve it. How many times you compromised your boundaries. How many moments you stayed silent when you should have walked away. How many versions of yourself you betrayed just to make others comfortable. And that realization, it can eat you alive if you let it. You start asking yourself, why did I let that happen? Why did I accept that treatment? Why didn't I see it sooner? Why was I so blind? And suddenly, the anger isn't just at them anymore. It's at yourself for staying too long, for ignoring the red flags, for giving chances to people who never deserved the first one, let alone the second, third, or 10th. And here's what nobody tells you about growth, about awakening, about finally understanding your worth. The hardest person you'll ever have to forgive? It's not the person who betrayed you. It's not the friend who abandoned you. It's not the partner who didn't choose you. It's you for letting it all happen in the first place. And until you learn to forgive yourself, until you understand why you made those choices, until you can look at that version of you with compassion instead of judgment, you'll never truly be free. You'll carry that weight, that resentment, that self-blame, and it'll poison everything you're trying to build. So here's what I need to tell you next. Something I learned the hard way. Something that changed everything for me. How do you forgive yourself? How do you let go of the anger you feel toward the person you used to be? How do you stop punishing yourself for not knowing then what you know now? And even harder, how do you forgive the people who hurt you? Not for them, but for you. So you can finally move forward without carrying their weight. Because here's the truth, silence gave you clarity. But forgiveness, that's what gives you freedom. And freedom is what we're going to talk about next. The next video, the one you need to watch right now, it's called How to Forgive Yourself and Everyone Else. And I'm telling you, if this video helped you see things differently, that next one is going to set you free. Because you can't move forward while dragging the past behind you. You can't build a new life while still punishing yourself for the old one. You can't become who you're meant to be while hating who you were. Watch it. Because what comes next? It's the missing piece. And once you have it, nothing will hold you back anymore.